We've got the next session where we've got Rama Vedashree, who's the CEO of DSCI, and she's here to do the introductory note and set the context. And a little introduction about Rama. As the CEO of DSCI, she is working towards making India a global hub for cybersecurity. I think, ladies and gentlemen, that deserves an applause. And prior to this role, Rama was Vice President NASSCOM, leading all initiatives in domestic IT, e-governance, and smart cities, among others. With a rich and varied experience of 28 years in the industry, her previous roles include that of Director in Microsoft Global Services and Vice President in GE India. Rama is a gold medalist from University of Hyderabad. She has also completed an executive education program from Harvard and a short program in high-performance computing from Cornell University. In her spare time, she actively participates in long-distance runs and has to her credit many half marathons. She is an inspiration for all of us at NASSCOM. Rama, over to you.
So good morning to all of you. Thank you. Thank you, Padma, for that warm introduction. Always a pleasure to come back to Hyderabad. It happens to be my hometown, and I've worked most of my career in Hyderabad in Microsoft and NIIT, and only last few years I'm based out of Delhi. Currently in my role at DSCI, we are based in Noida. So I first compliment the Business Continuity Institute and my colleagues at NASSCOM Hyderabad for putting up this very rich agenda, and I also compliment them for bringing the focus both on cyber security and privacy. I think we as Data Security Council of India, which is an entity of NASSCOM, while we are primarily chartered on data protection and cyber security, including the Industry Growth Charter for Cybersecurity, privacy is something that is in the DNA of DSCI. The organization's genesis owes itself to the cause of privacy and privacy certification. And currently, I think in the country, privacy has become a raging debate right up to the Supreme Court. So I'm glad that both have been combined because both are two facets of data protection according to DSCI. So let's get on with the session. Okay. So essentially, when you talk about cyber resolution and particularly privacy, I think we just need to take stock of the digital momentum that is happening in the country, and particularly the state in which we are in Telangana. We see a whole lot of digital transformation that has been happening for maybe last 10 years, which is getting accelerated, and across India. So we are familiar with the National E-Governance Program in the past, and now the Digital India Program, where the way public services are delivered are getting transformed, not just by ministries in the central government, but also in almost every state. I don't think we really have any true laggard states right now. Even that laggard or leadership states in e-governance is a very relative thing, but even states which 2 years back, 3 years back have been called as laggard states in e-governance or in digital transformation have made a lot of progress. So Digital India, and even when we saw this entire technology-enabled GST and rollout, I think we as an industry need to take a lot of pride in which the way even government has started leveraging technology to transform the way any initiative or any government program is rolled out. I think in the last 4 or 5 years, we noticed that there is no large public services initiative of any government, central, state government, where technology is not core to rollout of that delivery, right? Similarly, particularly in the last 6 to 9 months time frame, we've seen significant momentum in digital payments. And when we look at digital payments, we are looking at a whole host of new instruments, whether it is wallets, whether it is from internet banking to mobile banking, and a whole lot of prepaid instruments. And there are new league of players, whether it is the payment banks, whether it is banks getting into the wallet business, or pure play wallet companies, the digital payments transformation that is happening. Similarly, Industry 4.0, while I think Europe and countries like Germany have really set the lead on this, in India a lot is happening, whether it is in the manufacturing sector, particularly in the automotive manufacturing sector, whether it's the global leaders in automotive who have big manufacturing setups in India or even the Indian auto OEMs, we see a whole lot happening in terms of Industry 4.0, the entire things on IoT and sensors, and we are able to see a lot of these technologies also being planned in the smart cities rollout. So in smart cities, we are familiar, there's this 100 smart cities mission. Several of the cities like in Madhya Pradesh or in Pune or some states have taken the lead, and a whole lot of technology infusion is happening into those cities in core sectors like solid waste management, water management, power smart metering. So it's not just classic vanilla G2C services, but there's a whole lot of pan city ICT infrastructure that is getting rolled out in terms of smart traffic management, smart, the entire surveillance or smart parking. Lot of pilots have happened in terms of smart parking in some of the IT hubs of the country. So there's a whole lot of technology infusion. So just to summarize, I think for this audience, I don't need to reiterate the telecom penetration or the growing internet penetration, but what is extremely important to talk about is the e-payments, because because the focus of this seminar is around cyber and privacy, I think e-payments and Aadhaar authenticated transactions are extremely important to call out. Rest of it, I think we are very familiar with. So the e-payments, look at the transaction value in terms of revenue and the number of transactions that have happened in terms of e-payments in the last few months, and other authenticated transactions, whether it is for KYC or KYR or it is for digital payments now, Aadhaar enabled payment system. I think those are seeing almost rapid. I think maybe 5-6 months back, Aadhaar was mainly used for KYC, whereas now a whole lot of digital transactions, thanks to the Aadhaar payment bridge that NPCI has rolled out. There's a lot of integration that is happening with POS devices which are enabled for biometric authentication being rolled out at very remote merchant sites, also in rural India. Similarly, when you look at IoT policies, yeah, they're almost, this number keeps changing by the day, about 200 million devices, and we will see a lot of them as smart cities, intelligent building management systems get rolled out in large commercial centers, or there's a lot of IoT that is happening in healthcare in terms of wearables. And all of them bring to the attention not only the cyber risks, but also the privacy challenges of the citizen and of the country at large. Sorry. So just to summarize in terms of the digitization paradigm, nothing new to this audience, but some of the important points I want to keep in mind. Keep in mind is that increasingly very core critical infrastructure sectors are opening up their enterprise IT infrastructure. Lot of them are getting integrated with cloud, maybe private cloud, some of them are government clouds and some of them are public clouds. So increasingly enterprise application infrastructure and application and IT infrastructure of an enterprise, including banks, are getting integrated with public information infrastructure, including cloud infrastructure, because of which that point that is there, increasing exchange of calls with the cloud. So when we look at this increasing exchange of calls with the cloud, traditional enterprise applications which were supposed to reside behind the firewall are now getting opened up to calls to the cloud to be able to transact, enable a consumer or a citizen to transact with the services which that enterprise is offering. Similarly, enterprise IT infrastructure always had probably a 9 to 7, 9 to 8 kind of a footprint where applications were open. You would see that in utilities, you would see that in a lot of government departments where probably there was a branch level or a department level service offering where we were standing in the queue. Whereas now, even public services or whether it's banking services, it is always on services, because of which, there's a whole lot of transaction processing that is happening always in an always on mode on devices which are not necessarily devices that reside within the enterprise. Similarly, when we are looking at information role, typically what did we do in terms of as an enterprise IT guy, as a CIO or as a CISO, information was meant for enterprise monitoring, information was meant for, keeping the lights on, as they call it, a cliched word. But right now, information is being used not only to be able to deliver value-added services to your stakeholders, which could be a B2B environment, a G2C environment, or a B2C environment. Apart from that, information is also being used to do automated decision making, particularly for risk professionals and particularly for cybersecurity professionals. How do you harness the information? How do you harness the incidents or whatever feeds that you get? And how do you do that automated decision making? I think this is one challenge that we all face. How do we scale up not only our process and technology capability, but how do we scale up people capability to be able to do this automated decision making, and what is the kind of technologies that you can leverage, whether it's AI, whether it's machine learning, whether it's bots. So there's a whole lot of technology infusion that is happening, which the risk and the security professionals need to be able to gear up to that. Similarly, digital payments I've already talked about, Aadhaar-enabled payment systems, PPI wallets, all of us are familiar with the Paytms of the world, or a whole lot of other instruments. Even traditional banks have got into this business, and now there are a lot of enterprises like Bharti Airtel and others getting into payment banks. India Post is becoming a payment bank, not only becoming, is already a payment bank, which should get rolled out worldwide. In all these challenges, I think advanced analytics plays a very important role. And how can analytics not only be applied for enterprise business value add, but also in the area of security? I think analytics is now beginning to play an extremely important role in security, and we are seeing a lot of contemporary future solutions in security, where the whole solution architecture of that security solution is based on analytics. Doesn't work, yeah. Okay. So in terms of technology evolution, we are seeing a lot of technology trends, yeah. AI and robotics, particularly in manufacturing, we are seeing a lot of robotics. I think even we are looking at a lot of IT industry getting disrupted in terms of robotics process automation, right? But particularly in auto sector, we are seeing a whole lot of technology innovation that is happening. Are we geared up for that? Are the policy frameworks geared up for that? Are people and the technology investments that you make into your enterprise geared up for that in India is something. Similarly, we are looking at 3D printing, yeah, and the fintech innovation. While there have been other hubs in Korea or in Singapore, India is fast catching up and is beginning to be seen as one of the emerging fintech hubs of the world, particularly when you look at the new successful startups, right? When you look at scan the startup story, the fintech innovation and the startups in the fintech space, whereas I think previously the first wave of successful innovators in startups was in the B2C space, whereas now we are seeing a lot of them on fintech and based on technologies which are most contemporary and which is the kind of innovation that we see in other parts of the world. The fourth industrial revolution that I already mentioned, I think here not only the automotive sector, we in DSCI, we engage very closely with oil and gas companies. They are all our members, corporate members from the critical infrastructure sector. There is no CIO and CISO in the world, in the country, in the public sector space, who's extremely engaged on this IT and OT integration. And then what is the cyber challenges that you need to deal with this? Because their OT infrastructure is really legacy infrastructure, maybe 20 years old, 15 years old, maybe IT is very contemporary infrastructure. How do you do this IT OT integration? What is the kind of SCADA security that you need to do? And typically the OT and SCADA systems are not traditional IT players. They are a whole league of energy players, whether it's a Honeywell, whether it's a Siemens or GE and those kind of companies. So how do you get OT OEMs and the IT service providers to be able to integrate and give the blueprint, because the CIOs and CISOs of the world are really challenged to get these two worlds to integrate and interoperate and deal with the security risks. All the more because the OT and the SCADA infrastructure is extremely legacy infrastructure. Similarly, we are talking about the data exploration. How many of us wear wearables, right? The Fitbits of the world for healthcare, even very critical healthcare implants that happen for post-surgery, monitoring, online monitoring that happens. And of course in smart cities, whether you look at surveillance, whether you look at traffic management, there's a whole lot of infusion of technology that is happening. And what is important is all these devices are generating real-time data. they're probably on your IP network, and all of them are open and vulnerable for attacks. So for this particular audience, you're familiar with maybe 10 years back, when you were managing the enterprise IT infrastructure of one of your global customers, or a bank in India, or a telecom company in India. I think we were happy with signature based solutions, antivirus, or dealing with virus, and malware was the most important threat. In the last, I think, 3-4 years, the whole things around advanced persistent threats or crypto attacks, IP theft, may not be so much in India, but globally IP theft was a very big challenge. I think a lot of cyber attacks was about stealing IP and all those cases. So patent protection, IP protection became a big compulsion for most enterprises, and data breaches. Whereas now when we look at, from now on till the future, we look at advanced persistent threats, we are looking at malware and ransomware things which we were not really prepared for, or we were not anticipating 12 years back. We are familiar with what we saw in WannaCry. I think just like virus was the basic threat that most enterprises and users were bothered about, I think ransomware and denial of service attacks. You talk to any telco CISO, telco CIO, you talk to any of the large critical infrastructure companies in oil and gas, in other sectors, I think or you just track the data, which probably if you can talk to some senior officer in CERT, I think the number of attacks that the country and the enterprises are subject to in terms of denial of service is just not funny. Okay. Similarly, we are looking at a whole lot of augmented reality, virtual reality targeting thing, because those technologies, I think the maturity to be able to deal with attacks on that is still not ready. We are still not prepared for that. So if you take I'm just summarizing, this is a busy slide. So if you look at the cyber security and cyber crime, some of the issues and challenges, nature of threat, the most important thing is offense is very easy, defense is difficult, right? And defense is a daily, by the minute task, by the second task, whereas offense, the person committing the offense needs to be successful just once. Maybe they have been at it for 3 years, but if they're successful once, that's enough. They can cripple an economy, they can cripple an enterprise, they can create multi-billion-dollar financial loss. And if you're looking at smart cities and critical infrastructure like oil and gas companies, they can create havoc in terms of public safety and health, right? I think just like we've had attacks like nuclear, cyber is capable of creating attacks beyond what a nuclear, similar or on par with what it does, because in the way the technologies, digital technologies are getting infused in core infrastructure sectors, particularly oil and gas and energy sector, I think any attack can not only bring financial loss, cripple the economy of the country, but most importantly, it can also do public safety, health, and those kind of risks. And rising complexity of attacks, we saw a taste of that in WannaCry, and the way it got escalated across the world in less than maybe half a day. Similarly, there are state and non-state actors, and we as a country, and with the kind of geopolitical risks that we continuously live in, and those geopolitical risks keep evolving by the quarter, by the month, and the year. I think cyber espionage is very important because of the critical and sensitive information of various sectors of the economy, and India as a growing economy is more vulnerable to that. Similarly, privacy, trademark court, here I think there's a lot of corporate business rivalry which also plays apart from state and non-state actors. Some of the organization challenges, all of us agree, just like IT was considered a cost center many years back, whereas now IT is, I think most enterprises, including mid-sized and large-sized companies in India, have moved to IT being a business enabler, IT being able to add value to the business. And I think no longer when a CIO is looking at $1 million IT rollout, he or she is being questioned on return of value, return of investment, and things like that. I think IT is becoming core to running a business, whereas when it comes to cybersecurity and privacy, it is still seen as a cost center. And it is seen as a cost center, I don't mind acknowledging that in the four walls of this room, it's seen as a cost center even in the most mature enterprises in India. Unfortunately, that is the state, and we have to move that. We have done, I think that perception has changed when it comes to core IT. I think CIO is, part of the business leadership team, is seen as somebody who's accelerating rolling out of a new business service by that bank or the telco or a retail company, whereas I think the CISO or the risk professional still does not have that. It is still a cost center. Then lot of our technologies and products that we deploy in the enterprise, particularly also in government sector, public sector, is they are not secured by design or they are not secured by default, and the default configuration is not meant to be secure. So is the user awareness, the user education that needs to be done, even when it comes to a simple mobile phone that you are using for digital payments. Still, you talk to any CISO or you talk to any risk professional, I think it's a compliance driven approach, because they need to report vulnerabilities to a certain or to RBI. I think there's a compliance driven approach, and it is changing definitely, given the financial and reputation risks that enterprises, they're beginning to wake up to this. I think there is a change, but still in majority of the enterprise it's a compliance driven approach for implementing security. Then the most important thing is, even before the security team professionals like you and me can wake up to the risks, I think the vulnerabilities are there in the open world. Vulnerabilities of platforms and products get disclosed even before that platform OEM can go and fix it, and we have seen those challenges. Similarly, in critical infrastructure sector, whether it's transportation, whether it is rail in India or whether it is oil and gas, I think upgradation and investments to upgrade legacy system. We don't see this so much as a challenge in eGov, because most infrastructure in eGov is maybe 3 years old, 4 years old, 5 years old. We don't see that so much in banking, because banking has always led the way in which technology investments have happened. But we do definitely see that in most sectors in India. And cybersecurity practices of SMBs. Why am I calling on this? Because when you look at manufacturing sector in India, it's a supply chain, right? Every OEM has hundreds of, may not be 100, maybe 2 dozens of tier 1 OEMs. The tier 1 OEM individually might be having 20 tier 2 OEMs. Right? It's a supply chain. You look at, particularly in manufacturing sector, it's a complete supply chain of providers, and those SMBs get integrated maybe online with the critical infrastructure of the auto OEM. I'm just using auto as an example. You can relate it to any other sector, right? So when they're integrating online and the entire supply chain is integrated, I think if those SMBs security investments and capability is not improved, then obviously the rest of the infrastructure. Similarly, when we look at GST, and we know whole lot of dealers who are going to integrate online. So not only should the GST and infrastructure be capable of that, even how do we ensure that dealers? So we've done some work around this, but I'm sure look at seeing the hundreds and millions of SMBs that are there across the country who are all going online, whether it's a B2C company or it's a B2B SMB, I think it's extremely important, the capability of that. Some of the domestic issues, we as a country, I think vulnerability reporting breaches or information sharing within the sector about breaches is still a very nascent discipline. Maybe banking sector is evolving to a certain extent because of the very strong regulator and institutions like IDRBT. I think there's a senior officer from IDRBT coming. Institutions of that build some maturity. So I think some level of information sharing in that sector has happened, but still a lot more to go. So I think reporting issues of cyber attacks because of the reputational risk involved, or maybe the compliance implementation is not so strong. So if you don't report, you can still get away, because unless you report and that information is stayed at the sectoral level or with peer companies, and if there is no actionable information to the peer companies in that sector, I think we are not doing a good enough job of the way we manage the cybersecurity institutional framework in the country. Similarly, police, I think luckily, you're in a state where I think the Telangana police has always been one of the leading states in which, capability of IT, having a cybercrime cell. A handful of such states that you can look at. But if you look at law enforcement capability across the country, whether it is national security institutions or particularly state level, district level police, ability to deal with a cybercrime reporting, investigating, gathering evidence, it's a huge challenge. Recently I had met with Mr. Vijay Shekhar of Paytm. When he was talking about, this entire digital payments momentum, he said, I am not worried about digital payments momentum and its growth. It will never get slowed down. He says the biggest worry is what is the capability of the law enforcement to be able to deal with consumer grievances in the area of digital payments. Because when the consumer goes and reports to a police in some remote, maybe in Srikakulam in Andhra Pradesh, or in Medak in Telangana, or in some place like Nasik or any place, does that local Thana or local SHO know what is a consumer grievance in a digital wallet system? So dealing with consumer grievances. So digital payments have completely, accentuated the problem of law enforcement capability in dealing with cybercrime. Whereas previously, I think cybercrime reports were either, cyber stalking issues which were, coming from citizens, or it was enterprise level data breaches. Whereas now there's a whole lot of consumer grievances, Pandora's box that we have opened up with digital payments. So that's a huge challenge. Global challenges. All of us are familiar with this MLAT treaty for cross-border data issues, because any cyber breach or data breach is not necessarily happening within the geographic boundaries of the country. It's happening from multiple countries. The attack may be spanned from country, server is in some third country, right? So how do we do with this cross-border data issues? That is a challenge. I think international cooperation, on paper there is a very good treaty called MLAT treaty, and there is an institution called Interpol, but you should only talk to any state police officer or the CBI, which is the national agency which deals with Interpol, on what the challenge is. Similarly, darknet and the dark web, I think it's a huge challenge, particularly combined with virtual or cryptocurrencies. Whether you talk to any state police officer in Goa or any one of these states, the kind of activity that happens, it's not just, malware and all of that. It's not just your credit card data of a bank which is available for purchase there, but it is about the activities that happen, whether it is child pornography, whether it is, what is those, drugs trading, and lot of them cannot be tracked, because A, they are on the dark web, and B, I think the transactions happen through virtual currencies. And law enforcement capability, scaling up the capability of law enforcement for that. And of course, the state actors thing I will not repeat. Then the stakeholders' concerns, and when I say stakeholders, I am talking about industry, I am talking about user enterprises, and of course government. I think skilled workforce is a challenge. You can read the latest ISC Square report. Globally, it's a challenge. India also has that challenge, but I think India is trying to do something, whether it's government with the ICIA program or the NASSCOM with the cyber security sector skills council, and lot of engineering colleges, IITs are beginning to do PhDs and MTech programs dedicated to cyber security, but that is not enough. And with the digital momentum wave in payments, end user awareness is one of the biggest challenge. And how do we do that in multiple languages? How do you touch rural audiences? Is something that all of us have to put our head together. So this is the whole summary. Let me just move forward. So right now what we are all looking at is, which is what each of you practitioners in the cybersecurity privacy domain should make this paradigm shift happening. It is happening globally. It is happening in some of the large mature enterprises in India. We are seeing that in the banking sector. We have seen that in the telecom sector. So at least two sectors in India, I think, are beginning to see the wave of this paradigm shift. Similarly, we are looking at, the age of digitization. I think the whole lot of investments in terms of machine learning. You talk to, 20 startups in cybersecurity in India, at least 5 or 6 of them, their solutions are based on machine learning. Their solutions are based on artificial intelligence. We have a startup in T-Hub incubated in the NASSCOM warehouse. His entire solution is around machine learning. So I think machine learning and artificial intelligence is no longer geeky words. They are now actually getting built into solutions, not only by the large security platform global vendors, but we are looking at even startups in India innovating based on that. Similarly, there's a whole lot of focus around API security. You must have seen either the work that is happening in CA and a lot of other platforms where I don't know how many of you all have heard the banking SBI's CIO talk in some of the conferences. He talked about in the last 8 months or 9 months, 300 mobile apps and some 220 APIs being developed for SBI. Of course, they're IT service providers, which means they need a very robust framework to manage those APIs, because every API is opening up the infrastructure to devices outside the network, apps, users outside the network. So API security and the framework to manage API, people are talking about how can secure APIs help you monetize so that you can open up your infrastructure for third parties to build solutions and build a revenue stream out of that. I think there's a whole lot of that work happening. And identity security, and when you look at identity security, there's a lot around not only iris and fingerprint, people are talking about voice biometrics, and a lot of work that is happening in solutions, real life solutions that are beginning to be evaluated and deployed. Even banks are talking about, can I do voice based authentication when a consumer calls up the call center. Similarly, if you look at the way previously all our approach was reactive, whereas now when you look at any mature enterprise CISO, he's talking about being able to, he or she is talking about investing in threat intelligence, investing in hunting skills. So you have those professionals who are continuously hunting for threats, and so that the enterprise gets prepared. And those threats could be insider threats, could be threats for the sector, or those could be threats at a sector level. I think investing in hunting skills in terms of people, all this concept of cyber ranges, people, you'll be surprised, I've met with cyber range team in Gurgaon. Very public sector banks are blocking that cyber range for 5 days, replicating their infrastructure, not really replicating, maybe creating infrastructure very similar to that, and sending a bunch of 10-20 security team professionals to come and understand how the vulnerabilities can happen, running maybe a database of I think 5,700 malwares, and see how they're prone for attack and constitute this red team and blue team. So this real life cyber range exercises, even a public sector organizations, public sector banks are beginning to do that. So we are seeing a paradigm shift, but I think we as security practitioners and professionals need to do a lot more. We need to have those conversations. It's not enough you have put in everything to do with people, process and technology, but how do you invest in these kind of skills, create those teams. I think creating a red team was an anomaly in an enterprise some time back, whereas now banks are talking about that in India. So some of the next gen elements in terms of cybersecurity, the most important thing I would say is security has soared from back office to the boardroom. At least we see that in telecom, we see that in the banking sector. Sooner or later we will see that in the oil and gas also. How often have you seen CISO present to the board? 1 year back. Whereas we at DSCI, when a CISO is calling us for some content which should go into his presentation, most often it is, he wants the landscape information or some big ticket incidents and the analysis of those incidents and whatever. We know that he or she has an upcoming presentation to the board. And we see those requests now coming quite often, some CISO of a bank talking to us, I'm preparing this, I need this content, can you give some analysis of this incident that has happened, maybe the Bangladesh heist case or the Sony case. And then when we drill down a little more, we know that 2 weeks down the line he has to present to the board. So it's very important that board level attention, and I think the regulator coming up with cybersecurity frameworks in the insurance sector, banking sector has helped make that change, whether it's SEBI, particularly in the banking sector, while I think still the framework needs to be really implemented in letter and spirit in most of the banks, but a lot of work is happening in that. Board approved emergency response plan, CISO empowerment, board level attention, maybe one of the board members being made accountable for cybersecurity, so he or she is continuously reviewing with the CISO. That is happening, and I think the RBI cybersecurity framework has made that change. Similarly, shift from prevention to detection. And another important point is security of person to person and machine to machine. I think with the proliferation of IoT and digital and this entire mobile devices interacting, then automated applications interacting with the infrastructure, how do we ensure that this machine to machine communication happens? And I think in the area of smart cities, oil and gas, this plays a very important role. So in e-governance, you're familiar with this. Why I'm saying this is large technology initiatives in India. Still the biggest spend in IT and the biggest spend in security in India still happens in government domain. That's a fact. Right? Some of you as providers may not be tapping into that domain, but I think the largest IT spend still in India happen in the public sector. So we are familiar with the entire network where there is back-end platforms like payment gateways facilitated by NPCI, the Aadhaar or the biometric platform. Then there are a lot of third-party service providers, there are state-level agencies, and of course there is this entire infrastructure, state-level data centers, remote data centers, then you have the state-wide area networks which even your current state has. And then there's a whole lot of personal information and transaction records. So when you look at the risks, not really getting into each one of them, so we have data leakage possibilities at every point in this ecosystem. Similarly, there's a whole lot of insecure endpoints. When we looked at WannaCry, I think we had laptops, PCs in an electricity board or PCs in some district, because those endpoints have never been focus of the infrastructure management and security management. So endpoint devices. Similarly, when you look at sharing for uninterrupted purpose for security, unauthorized access, and those unauthorized, lot of them could be insider risk that we face with. And if you look at the NCRB cybercrime report, that chapter, lot of them are insider risk issues that have insider threat issues that have come in. Similarly, if you look at in terms of smart cities, not really getting into all of them, some of the components and the security challenges. I'm trying to give a more India focus to this because these are large initiatives which are going to impact us not only as citizens but as a provider ecosystem. This provides a lot of opportunity for us. So some of the security challenges are there are a lot of new technologies that are getting ported in the water field or in energy sector when you look at smart metering and all of that, but there is a whole lot of legacy infrastructure in that sector. How do you ensure we deal with that? Also, we not only had capability constraints at a central level and a state government level. Now the entire smart city is being managed by a special purpose vehicle at a city level. So is the city responsible, is the city capable of dealing with emergency response, dealing with large vulnerabilities, reporting, and do they have a security operations center? So we have matured in terms of state data centers. I think we can take pride in the maturity of state data centers in most states in India compared to what it was 2 years back. But when you look at a security operations center, we know NCIIPC is talking about a national SOC. But when will that kind of a mature SOC come at a state level and come at a city level? So city level emergency response teams and city level security operations centers is one thing. And there is attention to it thanks to the National Cyber Security Coordinator's Office. There is a cyber security framework that was published by the National Cyber Security Coordinator and MOUD, which DSCI contributed to. And I think now Ministry of Urban Development is trying to enforce that cyber security framework. So the maturity will happen. I believe that it's a question of evolution. We are seeing that maturity in the telecom and banking sector. We will see this in the government. We have seen this, how GSTN went live with the kind of complex infrastructure. And we need to take pride in the maturity that we've built in the country. Similarly, I believe it's a question of time where in the Smart Cities project, over a period of time, and enabling frameworks like cyber security framework, and of course we as industry have a responsibility to be able to scale that ecosystem up. So now coming to the second thing, which is almost wrapping up my session. When we look at the digital proliferation, whether it is mobile banking, digital, whether it's digital payments, whether it is IoT and smart devices, wearables, there's a whole lot of privacy risks. And in India, while there is a lot of attention to security even at an enterprise level and particularly at a government level and in large complex G2C project, I think privacy has never got that attention because we've never had that regime. And luckily now, I hope you're tracking this. There is a proposed data protection law by Ministry of IT. There's a committee that has been formed. We are one of the members in that, but it is being chaired by a very eminent judge, Justice Sri Krishna. So hopefully, and there is this entire debate on privacy being a fundamental right. But what is important is, while there is no legal mandating thing of privacy in India because there is no privacy law, what is important is lot of organizations are following best practices of security. Telecom, banking sector. You will be surprised in the last 12 months, the number of training programs on the DSCI privacy framework got increased. Like we are doing that in telcos, we are doing that in banks. I think recently my team was there in SBI, where they had almost 25, 30 GM level people going through a full day workshop on privacy, including the EU GDPR, because they have SBI has a decent footprint in EU. So they want to get completely familiar with how do they become compliant with the EU GDPR regulations, because they have a good amount of branch infrastructure in European Union countries. So we are seeing this in public sector banks, and there's a lot of demand that we are seeing in the 12 months which we have not seen before in terms of privacy certification and lead assessment. And I hope once the data protection law, this discipline will become mature. And I think this entire thing about mass surveillance continues to be a risk. And once we have a strong data protection regime in the country, I hope some of these. So while the security capability in the country is getting raised up, I think there's extremely important imperative is also to raise the privacy infrastructure, the privacy capability. So privacy protection in the age of technology, some of the issues that we look at is biometrics. I think this entire debate on privacy in India is now mainly because of Aadhaar and Aadhaar enabled services that has come up, and wearables and healthcare devices, because every time my health is being monitored, there's a whole lot of debate about healthcare devices given by employer to the employee through which your health can be tracked. So there are some debates around that which we need to address. So I'm almost done. Let me just get all of this. So this is more a summary. I think the cybersecurity imperatives of the digital, I've already talked a lot about the attacks and the threats and the increasing complexity of the threat landscape, both from state and non-state actors and also from insider risks. And how can the data be misused? Dark web is another huge challenge. Law enforcement capabilities struggles to deal with what happens on the dark web. There's some capability that is getting built. I think there's a lot of attention on that in national security organizations. And how do you ensure that the digital footprint of a citizen does not lead to a privacy breach and profiling of the citizens? And we do see a lot of attention, and we see this transformation because we now have a National Cybersecurity Coordinator's Office in the Prime Minister's office who can do this coordination between regulators, who can do coordination between line ministries. So I do see a lot of mature developments. So just to summarize, because we come from DSCI and we engage a lot with government, this is the existing cybersecurity initiatives in India. I can talk about the 2016 developments. There was a security framework for smart cities which MOUD and the National Coordinator's Office issued. There were 3 regulators, SEBI, RBI and IRDA, which have issued the frameworks. 2 states including Telangana came up with a cybersecurity policy. The policy is talking about a state level cert. And there's an IRDA cybersecurity framework, and there's a new data protection law in the making. There's also some work happening at standards level at BIS. This is the entire national cybersecurity ecosystem. There are a lot of agencies, but I think the most important agency that we should look at is the National Cybersecurity Coordinator's Office and the NCIIPC, which is the Critical Information Protection Center, which comes under NTRO. And there are, I hope all of us are familiar with that. Banking sector has announced the cert in the budget, right? Mr. Jaitley announced that. Oil and gas sector or energy sector is going to have its own certs, and they're also going down with multiple certs for thermal, hydro and all of that. So obviously there is some attention at a national level in terms of capability building. Some recent DSCI initiatives, we are working on a big digital payment security alliance and an awareness campaign. We are also working on a use case clearinghouse. because startups cannot do fundamental R&D, right? They don't have the bandwidth and deep pockets. And how do we work with user enterprise organizations, CISOs, academia, discover feasible white spaces, throw it up as challenges to the startups so that they can go ahead and build a solution. So we are seeing good progress on that, and we are also working at a national technology capability repository so that at a central level there is one repository which will showcase all the competencies in cyber and where it resides. It might reside in HCL, Infosys, Auth-Base in T-Hub, Indian Institute of Science, Indian Institute of Technology. There is no single repository to say where those competencies. And please note, this technology repository is not a repository of all products and solutions. It is a repository of competencies that contribute to cybersecurity capability, which includes artificial intelligence, machine learning, IoT, maybe disk encryption. So there will be competencies mapped, and we have just initiated the project. You will hear more on that. So I'm not really getting into these projects in the interest of time. I just have one slide, which I will anyway leave these slides. I'll come back to the agenda. I had another slide, I don't know where that's gone. Okay, I think it's not there. So I think we as a technology industry have some imperatives. One, I would encourage each one of you to work with startups, collaborate with startups. I think there needs to be a lot of capability skills building. So at an industry level, we are doing a lot of work around skills development. We have last year launched about 5 job roles in the curriculum, and that happened because practitioners like you contributed to validating those job roles and that content and that curriculum. So you have a role to play in terms of the community skills development. And look at some of these new technologies. We have some special interest groups in automotive security, in blockchain. There's a colleague of mine, Mayank, who's doing a lot of work around blockchain. So contribute to this. And I think the platform companies and the end user organizations and the startups and the service providers have a role to collaborate. Quite often when you meet with a CISO, I as an industry body should table this to each one of us, because we are all in the provider ecosystem. They are a worried lot, because there's a platform and there's a stack, there is a service provider, then there are niche solutions, and even the most mature CIO and CISO struggles to integrate all of them. So how do we ensure that we as an industry ecosystem collaborate so that our end customer, which could be a government or a global customer or an end user, does not struggle dealing with us. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Rama. May I request Srikanth to give away a small token of appreciation. Rama, we would just need you on the stage again, please. A small token of appreciation on behalf of NASSCOM.
Thank you.
Ladies and gentlemen, for the